Hello everyone and welcome! Today we're gonna be doing another tech profile and today we're gonna be focusing on Raging Bolt EX. Raging Bolt is known to be a beat stick, which means it's a turn 2 attacker with high damage output. And why are we focusing on Raging Bolt and not other beat stick decks? It's because in Japan, in Stellar Crown meta, it's performing absurdly well. It has insane results, and that's why we're gonna be focusing on how I would play Raging Bolt in the Stellar Crown format. So, we have 4 Raging Bolts, we have 4 Teal Mask Ogerpon, we have 1 Pheasantipity to draw when we're knocked out, Squawkabilly for the first turn hand refresh, we have Radiant Greninja for Draw Engine, we have Sandy Shocks to deal with the Mimikyu. So, we have for our supporters the 4 Professor Sada's Vitality, we have 1 Briar, that's mainly to deal with Ancient Boxes, and we also have 1 Crispin, which is similar to Sada, which helps us get the turn 1 attack. We have 1 Iono for Hand Disruption, and 1 Boss's Orders for Cast. For our items we have 4 Nest Ball, we have 4 Earthen Vessel, we have 3 Pokegear to search out our supporters, we have 3 Trekking Shoes, we have 3 Energy Retrievals, we have 2 Pokemon Catchers for Gust as well, we have 2 Switch Cards to deal with Stall and to heal our Pokemon. We have a Lost Vacuum to deal with the Tool Cards, or maybe even Stadiums, who knows. We have 1 Prime Catcher as the ace pack of choice. We have a Pal Pad to return our supporters into the deck. We have 2 Bravery Charms to increase the HP on our Pokemon. And we also have 2 Pokestop to get our energies in the discard and items into hand. For our energies, we have 3 basic fighting energies, we have 3 basic lightning energies, and we have 6 grass energies. So that concludes our 60, and as you can see, the deck is heavily inspired by the 6th place in the World Championship, because I like the deck very much, and I didn't want to go in the same direction as the players in Japan did, with adding judges and changing the deck a lot. I just said, okay, let's use a deck that works and just add new cards that work with it. And yeah, so it actually performs similarly than how it did in the current meta in the Shrouded Fable format. We can talk about the matchups now. So, the best matchups, in my opinion, are the beefy 2-price decks, such as is Charizard, as is Dragapult, as is obviously Regidrago V-Star, which this is kind of a counter to it. Also, the beatstick decks, such as Roaring Moon, is not as good into this one. Roaring Moon EX, not to be mistaken with the small one. Miraidon EX also has slightly unfavored matchup into this deck, and yeah, also the new decks that are appearing in the Stellar Crown format. The Palkia deck, I believe, has a kind of horrible matchup into the Raging Bolts, as well as the Galavantula and other decks that are now emerging are not really favored against this one because it has really such a high damage output. You can hit over 400 if you play it well, so that's kind of insane. But there are still some matchups that feel very awkward or very unfavored or just unwinnable altogether. And the awkward matchup, of course, is the Iron Thorn CX, because you don't have the abilities of the Ogerpon, so you can't excel so much energy into play. That's why we played the Crispin as well as Sadas, to get the energy as soon as possible to ramp up the damage when needed. And another matchup that feels kind of awkward and heavily unfavored is the Ancient Box, which is heavily single price deck, and it's kind of clunky to get around because you have two prizers which get hit very easily very soon by the Ancient Box because the damage output of the Ancient Box is growing rapidly, and they have single prizers, so you can't trade prizes 2 for 2. That's why we included Briar in the deck, to get this matchup a bit more 50-50, so that you get the last knockout when the opponent only has 2 prizes left. You take the last knockout with the Ogerpon, which is a Terra Pokemon, on their, let's say, Roaring Moon, and you take 2 prizes instead of 1. So that kind of shifts the favor back to us, and a deck that I think personally is basically unbeatable is the new Noivern Ogerpon deck, which I despise with all my being. Because there's just no way to get around it. If they bench 2 Pokemon, you knock out 1, they use Thornton, get the Noivern EX in play, and then just leave it like that. There's no way you can get around, and you can just wait it out until, well, it's over, I guess. And another matchup that's kind of awkward, and it's kind of a very specific, is the stall decks or control decks. Those are also kind of awkward to approach them because you need a lot of bench space to get all of your energies going, and they abuse your bench space, and it's just not all that great in my opinion, but you can work around it by not benching Greninja, not benching Squawk, so they can't get bossed up and stuck in the active, and you just play the Raging Bolts and the Ogerpon to get the knockouts, and maybe you can work around with that. I'm not entirely sure, I didn't test that unfortunately. But yeah, that's sort of the main meta decks. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, Lost Zone also feels kind of very awkward. I mean, Lost Boxes, not Lost Giratina, which is a heavy 2-prizer, which you can knock out very easily, but Lost Boxes, the single-priced ones, are also very awkward because, yeah, it's again the 1 prize versus 2 prize trade. You can get around them, there's no problem, but late in the game they might have some counter in the form of, I don't know, a Blood Moon Ursaluna, which hits exactly 240, which is exactly the HP of the Raging Bolt. So yeah, Lost Boxes are also matchup that I'm not very comfortable with, so that's also the one you should tread very carefully when approaching those matchups. So yeah, that concludes our deck profile. I hope it helps any of the players. And if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.